Ryan Keller wiped the sticky residue off his helmet visor for what felt like the 20th time that morning, and muttered something that sounded like a curse, but could have been an old Earth nursery rhyme. The Vexara mess hall replicator had delivered his breakfast in a suspiciously gelatinous form, gray with streaks of neon blue, and he was convinced it was sentient enough to be mocking him. He jabbed at the goo with his spoon and watched it wobble like it had just learned to dance. Somewhere behind him, a metallic clang echoed, and he jumped, forgetting for a moment that he was on a planet where gravity sometimes decided to take a vacation. "Oh, come on, I've had nightmares less sticky than this," he muttered. The sudden quiet that followed made him tense. On Vexara, quiet often meant something was plotting. He turned, expecting perhaps a rogue drone or a wayward miner, but instead he found himself staring at her. "Lyra." She leaned casually against the doorway, one long ear flicking as though tuned to the planet's hum, her violet-tinged eyes scanning the room. She was human-like enough to make him relax momentarily, almost, but those ears, elongated and expressive, twitched at every sound, a feature that both fascinated and slightly unnerved him. "A nice hat," Ryan said, pointing vaguely toward her head, trying to cover the fact that he had absolutely no idea what he was looking at. Lyra raised an eyebrow, the corner of her lips twitching in a way that suggested amusement rather than offense. "It's called ears, human. Ever heard of them?" she said, her voice smooth but carrying a hint of amusement. Ryan's mouth opened as if to respond, but no sound came out, leaving him with only the impression of an idiot. He cleared his throat, muttering something about being more careful with his compliments next time. The rest of the morning passed with a series of small disasters that seemed to follow Ryan wherever he went. He tripped over a magnetic anomaly near the hangar bay, sent a stack of maintenance crates tumbling down a gravity-shifted ramp, and somehow managed to activate the emergency sprinklers inside a control room. Lyra, meanwhile, walked around all of it with an air of quiet confidence, manipulating the magnetic fields with a flick of her fingers to steady crates, reroute the sprinklers harmlessly outside, and even coax the hover platform Ryan had crashed into obediently back into alignment. Every time he attempted to help, she gave him a look that could melt steel, or at least his pride, and he couldn't decide which was more dangerous. By mid-afternoon, Ryan was covered in oil, coolant, and an assortment of unidentifiable grime, muttering, "Why do aliens always make everything look so easy?" Lyra, brushing a smudge of dust from her tunic, shot back, "Because most of us learn to survive before breakfast. You're making an effort. Admirable." Ryan flinched slightly, convinced that was faint praise at best. Then came the first subtle shift in tension. A soft alarm pulsed from the communications array. Ryan snatched up a handheld terminal, squinting at the flickering holographic screen. A distress signal. A transport shuttle carrying colonists had become trapped in one of Vexara's deep crimson canyons, shrouded by rising clouds of corrosive fog. Ryan's first instinct was to panic. "We're going to die," he said, his voice cracking a bit, and glanced at Lyra for confirmation. Instead, she was already striding toward the hangar bay, fingers trailing over the hovercar console as though it were a child she was guiding rather than a high-tech vehicle. Her ears twitched as she scanned the environment, and Ryan noted with awe and mild jealousy that she seemed to read the canyon like it was a well-thumbed map in her mind. "Hey, you're not going to let me drive, right?" he asked nervously. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She smirked faintly. "You'll assist, and try not to soil the upholstery," she said. Ryan blinked, realizing she had somehow read his thoughts, or at least his panic, and he swallowed hard. Hovercars on Vexara weren't exactly built for comfort. Ryan's idea of assisting usually involved panicking, pressing random buttons, and occasionally screaming. He tried to remind himself that the mission was serious, but every time he looked at her long ears twitching in precise rhythm with her movements, he couldn't help but think they made her look like she might pull this off without breaking a sweat. The hovercar lifted off, groaning as it fought against the planet's erratic gravity fields. Ryan held on for dear life as the canyon walls rushed past, occasionally trying to point out what he thought were shortcuts, but were actually just more jagged cliffs. Lyra made gentle corrections, muttering jokes about human pilots and their slightly theatrical panic response. One misstep sent the car spinning briefly, forcing Ryan to cling to the dashboard and cry, "Are we supposed to do that?" Lyra didn't miss a beat. "Only if you want to experience life as a pancake," she said, her tone dry, almost affectionate. Finally, they reached the shuttle, the thick acid fog curling like fingers below the precarious cliffside. Ryan tried to steady himself, scanning the situation while muttering, "Why do I always end up at the pointy end of things?" Lyra crouched by the shuttle's damaged hull, her fingers brushing over panels that sparkled faintly under her touch. "Gravity fields destabilized, propulsion offline, emergency AI corrupted," she said aloud, almost as if listing ingredients for a complicated recipe. Then, in a gesture that made Ryan gape, she touched the shuttle's interface with her long ears, glowing faintly as they connected. Sparks danced harmlessly across the hull, and the shuttle began to stabilize as the fog churned below. Ryan, unable to stop himself, blurted out, "Your ears just," but stopped, realizing no words could do justice to what he was seeing. Lyra glanced at him, one corner of her mouth lifting in a rare smile. "Do try to keep up, Lieutenant. The colonists are counting on us." Ryan nodded, trying to appear competent while secretly terrified. Yet even as he fumbled with the controls, the situation didn't feel hopeless. Somehow, the combination of Lyra's calm ingenuity and her oddly endearing, almost comical confidence made him feel alive. As the sun, or what passed for a sun on Vixara, dipped behind jagged red spires, Ryan watched Lyra with a mix of awe and exasperation. Her ears twitched as she analyzed the canyon, every movement precise and purposeful, while he tried to remember which lever did what. The danger was far from over, but for the first time since arriving on this unpredictable world, he realized that perhaps surviving with her at his side wouldn't be impossible. And maybe, just maybe, a little fun if he didn't die first. And somewhere between the spinning hovercar and the twitching ears, Ryan understood that the most dangerous rescue of his life was only just beginning, and that he had absolutely no chance of keeping up with the alien woman, who seemed to bend physics, fate, and gravity itself with a flick of her fingers and the subtle sway of her long, expressive ears. Ryan's hands were slick with sweat and coolant as the hovercar shuddered over the canyon ridge. He kept muttering to himself, half in panic, half in disbelief. "I knew it. I knew I should have taken that vacation on Mars instead." Smooth sands, no acid fog, no twitchy alien ears. Lyra, perched on the hovercar's console with her long, elegant ears flicking rhythmically, shot him a sideways glance. "You're not helping, Lieutenant, but thanks for the commentary." Ryan tried to apologize, but the words stuck in his throat when the canyon walls stretched into dizzying verticality beneath them. The fog churned like a living, corrosive creature, sending tiny acid droplets sparking harmlessly off the car's reinforced hull. "Hover stabilization at 98%, Lyra said, her voice calm despite the chaos, thruster recalibration complete. "You may breathe now if that's necessary for human physiology." Ryan wheezed a laugh, coughing through the haze. Necessary? Yes. Optional? Absolutely not. He attempted a heroic posture, fingers gripping the console as though sheer force of will could keep them afloat. Lyra's ears twitched, glowing faintly, scanning the fog below for thermal anomalies. "I'll let you handle the dramatic gestures," she said. "I handle the reality." Ryan's face flushed as he realized she had just complimented him by proxy, or insulted him. He wasn't sure which. The shuttle hovered ahead, wedged perilously between two jagged cliffs, thrusters sputtering and sparks dancing along its frame. "That's not great," Ryan muttered, pressing buttons at random. Each press triggered more holographic cats dancing across the windshield. Maybe not the best time for entertainment." Lyra didn't flinch. Humor stabilizes human nerves. Consider it therapy. Ryan blinked. Therapy. I feel like I'm about to die and you call that therapy. She arched one elegant eyebrow. Exactly. Laugh or panic, your choice. They approached the shuttle cautiously, Lyra's ears literally touching the control panels on its hull. Ryan noticed with a mixture of awe and unease that the tips glowed as she manipulated the ship's corrupted AI. Sparks flared, alarms rang, and yet the shuttle's thrusters began to stabilize. Okay, that's impressive, Ryan admitted, leaning over to see her work. Your ears just, he trailed off, realizing again words were insufficient. Do try to keep up, Lieutenant, Lyra said, her lips twitching in the ghost of a smile. We have colonists to rescue. Ryan tried to follow her instructions, which meant holding awkward levers, pressing buttons, and occasionally flailing like an uncoordinated puppet. Am I doing this right? He asked, voice shaking. Lyra glanced at him briefly. You're doing adequately, don't sprain anything. Ryan groaned. Adequately, that's the best I get. She shrugged. It's honest. That's better than most humans deserve. He rolled his eyes, muttering, I hate being described as adequate. The acid fog below began to rise, licking at the edges of the cliff. Ryan flinched at every hiss of corrosive mist. Lyra calmly manipulated the shuttle's gravity fields to create a protective bubble around the passengers. Ever consider that you might be afraid of fog? She teased, her ears twitching with amusement. Afraid of fog? Ryan shouted, incredulous. This isn't ordinary fog, it's acid fog. I could. He stopped mid-complaint as a small robotic drone zipped toward them, sensors glowing red. And that, Lyra said, is your cue. Ryan fumbled with the anti-drone laser, accidentally firing a pulse that ricocheted off a canyon wall and harmlessly pinged the hovercar. That was totally intentional, he said, giving her a thumbs up. Lyra rolled her eyes, ears flicking in a precise rhythm that seemed almost musical. Impressive display of human panic control, she said. We'll call it art. Ryan snorted despite himself. Art, right. I'll tell my mom they studied my panic as high art on another planet. Lyra interfaced directly with the shuttle's thruster controls, using her ears to read the failing circuits and reroute power. Sparks danced across the hull, giving the scene an ethereal glow. Ryan, meanwhile, attempted to coordinate with the colonists inside, shouting, Hey, everyone! If you see an alien woman with glowing ears, don't panic. She's mostly friendly. A voice inside the shuttle replied, mostly. That's comforting. Ryan groaned, realizing he sounded more like a frantic tour guide than a soldier. The hovercar's engines whined, struggling against the canyon's shifting magnetic currents. Lyra's hands moved over the console with fluid precision, stabilizing the shuttle while delivering deadpan commentary on Ryan's dramatic flailing. I think your arms are broken, she said, or you're inventing a new dance form, hard to tell. Ryan swiped at her jokingly. Careful, I might invent a new disaster dance. She smiled faintly, an almost imperceptible twitch of amusement. Her ears glowed a brighter violet as she rerouted more power to the shuttle's thrusters, nudging it free from the canyon's grip. Finally, after a tense moment that felt like an eternity, the shuttle levitated steadily, engines humming in a synchronized rhythm. The colonists cheered, a sound that reverberated oddly in the canyon, making Ryan yelp as if startled by his own survival. We did it, we actually did it, he said, collapsing into a seat. Lyra floated beside him gracefully, ears twitching, eyes glinting with a mixture of relief and mild amusement. Technically, yes. You assisted minimally, she said, but your moral support was audible. Ryan groaned. Audible moral support. I'll put that on my resume. They hovered above the canyon ridge, the acid fog swirling harmlessly beneath them, and Ryan watched Lyra with a mixture of awe, exasperation, and gratitude. He tried to think of a witty comment, but his brain refused. Lyra, sensing his hesitation, tilted her head and let one long ear brush the console. Next time, she said lightly, try to keep the screaming to a minimum. It adds to the chaos unnecessarily. Ryan laughed, despite himself. Next time, huh? And here I thought we'd be taking a leisurely cruise through space afterward. Her faint smile, rare and fleeting, was enough to make him forget the dangers of Vexara for a brief moment. He realized that with her at his side, the chaos of the canyon and the near-death experience somehow felt manageable. And even though he was still terrified, he knew something had changed. He wasn't just following an alien woman with long, glowing ears into danger. He was learning to survive it, and maybe, just maybe, to enjoy the ride. As the shuttle powered steadily toward safety, Ryan muttered one last thing under his breath, eyes fixed on her glowing ears. "I'm never going to live this down, am I?" Lyra's eyes glinted with humor and something softer. "Probably not. But that's part of the fun, Lieutenant." And for the first time that day, Ryan laughed freely, realizing that amidst the terror, the acid fog, and the malfunctioning hovercar, a bond was forming, awkward, hilarious, and unstoppable. The shuttle hummed steadily as it drifted away from the jagged cliffs of the canyon, engines glowing softly in the dim twilight of Vexara. Ryan sank into a seat, knees rubbing against the console, and stared at Lyra. Her ears twitched rhythmically, scanning the cabin, her violet eyes shimmering faintly as she observed the colonists. She moved with the effortless grace of someone entirely in tune with the ship, yet she carried herself lightly, as if humor and curiosity were as natural as breathing. Ryan could not help but feel a mix of awe and exasperation. He had survived her most dangerous rescue, intact, but he also felt like he had enrolled in an alien boot camp disguised as a life-or-death mission. He leaned back, attempting to reclaim some dignity. "So, we did it," he said, voice wobbling between relief and disbelief. Lyra glanced at him, one corner of her lips twitching. "Technically, yes. The colonists are safe and the ship is operational. You assisted minimally." Ryan flinched, the word minimally hitting him with the subtle force of a gravity spike. "Minimally, I saved a holographic cat from spinning into the dash. That counts as hero work." She tilted her head, ears flicking in amusement. "Hero work in the artistic sense, sure. I'll file it under endearing human panic management." Ryan groaned. "I swear your sense of humor is deadly." The colonists began moving about the cabin, some still shaking, others attempting to regain composure. Ryan noticed one of them whispering nervously about the twitching, glowing ears of their rescuer. He nudged them gently. "Don't worry. She's mostly friendly." The colonist gave a skeptical glance. "Mostly?" Ryan shrugged helplessly. "Mostly. I've been reassured, and that's enough for me." Lyra's ears twitched at the exchange, and she looked at him over the console. "You do realize that I am fully capable of ejecting you into space at any time, correct?" she said lightly. Ryan laughed nervously. "I'm aware, but I'm counting on your good judgment, or your mild amusement at my antics." As the shuttle entered stable orbit above Vexara, Ryan took a moment to reflect. The mission had begun as a simple retrieval, a routine task for a soldier trained in protocol and procedure. He had expected danger, sure, but not the whirlwind of chaos, alien technology, and wit that had accompanied Lyra at every step. He realized how much he had underestimated her. Not just her combat and technical abilities, but her resourcefulness, her instinctive bravery, and her subtle humor that had kept him sane in moments he thought panic was inevitable. He glanced at her again. Lyra was crouched near the controls, one hand tracing the patterns of the shuttle's grav field interface, her ears glowing softly as she recalibrated energy flows. "You know," he began, hesitating, "I think I've been doing this all wrong. Trying to act like I had control when I had none." She looked up, eyes curious. "And what have you learned, human?" Her tone was gentle, almost teasing, and Ryan felt a strange warmth. That sometimes survival isn't about controlling everything. It's about trusting someone or something smarter than you, who also happens to have glowing ears. Lyra's lips twitched into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "A profound observation, Lieutenant. I will consider it while filing your human insights under entertainingly sincere. Ryan chuckled, shaking his head. I have no idea if that's a compliment or an insult. She tilted her head, ears flicking like antennae. Yes. The colonists began to settle down, expressing gratitude, albeit with nervous glances at Lyra. Ryan jumped in, translating technical instructions in his own bumbling way, managing to make at least one colonist laugh while another muttered, "We'll never unsee those ears." Lyra rolled her eyes at his commentary and Ryan laughed along with her. For the first time in what felt like months, he allowed himself to enjoy the absurdity of surviving on Vixara, acid fog, malfunctioning hovercars, and all. Hours later, they reached the orbital docking station where the colonists would be transferred safely. Ryan helped guide them down, offering what comfort he could while Lyra monitored from above. As the last colonist descended, Ryan turned to her. "So, mission accomplished, all alive, everyone mostly sane, you're still glowing, that counts as a win, right?" Lyra tilted her head, observing him with a faint smirk. "A win by human standards. You have improved in terms of composure, progress noted." Ryan laughed. "Improved? I think I just survived without dying, that's progress enough." As they prepared to depart the orbital station, Ryan noticed a quiet moment settle over the cabin. Lyra floated near the console, ears twitching in a rhythm that seemed almost musical. He realized he was no longer just in awe of her abilities. He respected her judgment, her bravery, and the subtle warmth hidden beneath her dry humor. The mission had changed him. He understood that heroism was not always loud or grandiose. Sometimes it was quiet, precise, and luminous, like the glow in her ears, or the calm in the midst of chaos. Ryan made a final, half-joking, half-serious declaration. "You know, I might actually enjoy the next insane rescue, as long as you're leading." Lyra glanced at him, her expression unreadable for a moment before softening into a small smile. "I will consider it, but know this, next time try to keep the screaming to a minimum." As the shuttle drifted into open space, the red spires of Vixara shrinking beneath them, Ryan let out a long sigh. He realized that the day's danger, chaos, and laughter had left a mark. He had grown, not just as a soldier, but as someone willing to trust, to learn, and to appreciate the unpredictable. Lyra, for all her alien precision, had done more than rescue colonists. She had shown him a new way to confront fear, to embrace the absurd, and to find humor even when the universe seemed ready to devour him. In the quiet hum of the shuttle, he watched her ears flick once more, faint violet light pulsing with each movement, and felt an unexpected sense of peace. The most dangerous rescue had ended, yet somehow it had also begun something new. A bond forged in chaos, strengthened with humor and tempered by courage. He realized he would never forget it, not the mission, not the alien woman, not the glowing ears that had guided him through peril. And for the first time in a long while, Ryan allowed himself to smile freely, knowing that whatever awaited in the next corner of the galaxy, he was no longer alone, and that sometimes survival was as much about companionship and laughter as it was about skill or luck. The shuttle sailed smoothly into the stars, carrying them both toward the unknown, and Ryan understood that he had been forever changed by a woman who dared the impossible with nothing more than her courage, ingenuity, and a faint, teasing glow at the tips of her ears.